Then some of the more ethereal stuff, the space and the planets, those were CGI renderings that were contributions for some of the artists at the Center for Supercomputing. So it was a real collaboration putting the film together and then editing the 7 screens, meaning the 6 rear projected screens and the 1 front screen, to prepare them to all be in sequence together. The screens, how they're edited is they're edited in very subtle ways to the metric structures of the music. So in some ways it's almost like subliminal cutting. You wouldn't necessarily have to read music or understand the complex structure of the different metric structures colliding and expanding, almost like planets coming apart and then coming together. But it's what makes everybody sort of know that something's happening, even though they're not seeing a story, and even though they don't know exactly why it should all be working so well together. Intrinsically, they can kind of tell that somehow the structure is linked. Not in an MTV way where it's just cut to a 4/4 beat, but it's actually cut to multiple metric sections so that things are changing on very crucial moments and crucial beats. It's a very beautiful thing. As you sort of get into it, you start to realize it.
Okay, well, I'd like to say to the public that I think you're a genius because of the technique that you use. You're very good at mixing film, poetry, music, live acting. But then again, there's also the confusion about, because in your poetry, some of those lines they're very simple, and sometimes I don't know how relevant they are unless, like, can you explain a bit the difference in, for example, I read some interviews that you've done where you have a lot of detail and a lot of research, but then the words you actually use in your lyrics are very simple. Why is there a gap between the background research and then what you actually present?
Well, I don't know that there's a gap. I mean, I think that I use words in a couple of different ways. I certainly use them as part of a rhythmic metric structure so that they can have multiple meanings. So for example, in Dennis Cleveland, some of the guests of the talk show are singing, "I'm glad if you're glad, I'm sad if you're sad." But as the metric structures of 5 against 6 combine, they have multiple meanings. One is, "I'm sad if you're glad." So it's through the rhythm of the music that you can kind of transform the words. And I also think that given the complexity of the music, I think it's important to strive for simplicity. So just because the sources come from very complex things, whether they're John Ralston Saul's ideas or whether they're the Capote archives that I researched in the New York Public Library to do Failing Kansas, I still believe that you want to strive for simplicity, and I'm hoping for a clarity in the text. It might not be a narrative text, but some of my favorite lyrics, especially from songs, come from things that aren't necessarily very clear. I mean, "Hey Jude" is a very simple song, and I defy most people to know exactly what it means. "Hey Jude, don't make it bad. Take a sad song, make it better." It's beautiful, but it's what's really beautiful about it to me is you can have so many interpretations. And so with the text, particularly with the Into Cinematics, I wanted to use a text that for me has profound meaning, from Intel Inside Entire Nation to Come Up to Breathe the Movie Money. All those things have significance to me, but I also wanted to keep it simple so that they could work rhythmically.
I see. Do you have any explanations to how you came about with those simple lyrics that have multiple meanings? Is it somewhere that the public can access so that they could decode what's...
Oh, no. I don't think it's anything as heavy as that. I just think like any writer, I'm writing and I'm testing things in front of audience, and I'm testing things with my performers, and I'm testing them in the studio. And I just try to, as structured as the stuff is, I really try to let that go and just let it flow, think about what I'm interested in saying, and see if it sort of comes. And if there's an added element of structure that's interesting that I can slightly twist it or move it around, I'm usually very happy.
Okay, I'm just gonna do a little experiment. I don't know if you've ever been, have to say something, but I'm just gonna say one word and you tell me what it means to you. Okay, because okay, sunflower.
Well, that's not fair because I'm thinking of Failing Kansas right now. Yellow. But I think that's why you're asking that question. I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned it.
In Failing Kansas, though, it has, again, I don't explain the meaning. There's been a great film by Richard Brooks based on Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. That's a faithful rendition of the book. And of course, there's the brilliant book. So I saw no need to write a piece that was going to retell that story. Instead, I went back to the original court transcripts, and notes and letters that Capote used to make a very abstract musical theater piece. That particular quote, taller than Jesus, yellow like a sunflower, is a quote that Perry Smith used to describe a dream that he had of a parrot who saved him from some of the things that were bad in his life, from the nuns and from some of the other things bad in his life. But rather than explaining that and spelling that out, I thought it was much more interesting to use it as poetry. And, people seem to get it. They don't necessarily have to know why they get it, but like I always like to say, you don't necessarily know why you like a sunset. You don't ask, what does a sunset mean? You just sit on the beach and you experience a sunset and you realize, wow, there's something really big going on here.
Okay, when you use the word I and me, like everybody wants me, are you talking about yourself or the character that you're playing or someone else? Like, because you use the first person sometimes when you say.
I think it varies, and I think again it's not something that I try to define. I'm not intentionally being evasive. It's just that in the context of that particular piece, there are multiple characters all playing themselves or playing different camera angles of themselves. So are those characters talking about them? Am I talking about the other person that's dressed like me? It's open for interpretation, and I find it's much more interesting if it's left open to interpretation.
So it's not necessarily that you're talking about yourself.
Well, yeah, yes or no. And also it could be that I'm talking about myself as that character. It's very, like I said, I go back to the sunset. If you figure out what the sunset means, then I could probably figure this out.
Oh, okay. So something simple can actually have multiple meanings. That's what you're trying to.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah,
show.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I read some of the articles, and there was a Toronto Star article about the writer was saying he couldn't understand what she meant by the one with the legs and everybody wants me. And so it made me think, yeah, actually, what does he mean by that? But
well, think of the Godard film Breathless. What is the guy saying through the whole thing? What is he really implying? That's what I would say to a critic. I don't read the reviews, so I don't know.
Oh, you don't?
Why?
Oh my God! So you won't even. Will you watch this video?
Well, I'll watch this because I actually am very, very supportive of young people doing blog and doing guerrilla and alternative stuff to major media. So I'm actually more interested in that. I'm interested in MySpace. I'm interested in all those outlets. I've met wonderful people that I was in touch with in New York about the Luminato Festival, and quite frankly, I'm much more interested in in working with them and seeing what their ideas are than I am working with mainstream media.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Because your sponsors are mainstream, Toronto.
Well, the sponsors
Star,
for the Luminato
L'Oreal.
Festival, absolutely, and I'm grateful for them. I have nothing against it. Don't get me wrong. I don't forget where I came from. I came from no money, and I came from very little resources, and I made these pieces when I had very little money and very little resources, and so I very much want to support young people who are doing the same thing that I was trying to do or hoping to do or whatever.
Wow, so well, hopefully more people will pick up multimedia and possibly use you as a role model.
Well,
because you have very, I really am so impressed with the way you mix everything together. Even though it's hard, I mean, it's simple and yet complex. Like you said, it probably has multiple meanings.
it's a little like life.
Yeah,
Simple and complex.
I guess. All right, have you ever taught any of your methods?
No, I'm not an academic, so I've definitely done things at universities and I've spoken with students and stuff, but I've never really had an interest in. I'm very much from the Woody Allen school of thought. Those who can do, and those who can't teach, and those who can't teach Jim.
Oh God, really? Well, so anyway, I guess I'm really grateful, and I hope that a lot of people will like your work and learn from it, because I certainly think you're a genius, and I hope that you continue to have impressive pieces that will, that the general public will eventually get a taste for.
Great. Well, it's been my pleasure to do this interview.
Yes, thank you.
Take care, Imelda. You're the best.